Hello, my name is Robert Brown. I am a production artist, game developer, and educator. And I wanted to create this short video to discuss one of my favorite topics, which is the topic of motivation. I think motivation is a great topic to kind of discuss because it plays such an important role in everything that we do. Whether it be engaging in a new career path, taking on a really difficult task that have some important, payoff in the end, or just continuing to strive to be great at what it is you are very much passionate about. Motivation is having a play in all of these things. Before we can really go into a discussion about it, we need to acknowledge something, and that's that motivation is very personal. And what I mean by that is what motivates you might be entirely different from what motivates me. Someone could be motivated from having seen a very influential artist or peer do something that they aspire to do, and all of a sudden they have seen that this is possible, and then now they are embarking on their own journey to achieve a similar goal or a goal that is very unique to them. Some people are motivated by loss, sometimes losing a loved one or someone that is really important to you, or a pet or something like that. Loss can sometimes change life view and put you in a state of urgency to try to live life to the full extent that you are able to live it, and taking every day as an opportunity. So now in that situation, you might find new motivation. You have a clear perspective and you are driven. But we can't divorce the fact that motivation is a choice, and it's something that only you can choose to engage. It's crucial to your growth as a person. I don't really need to go into detail about that. If you are not motivated, well, you are stagnant. And that's a very unfortunate place to be, but we're not going to allow ourselves to be in that place. So why bother? So if that's a question that you find is kind of resonating in your thought process, or you kind of you often come to that conclusion, or that question pops up throughout your day, well, understand that that question in itself is the antithesis of our topic. The question of why bother, will definitely keep you from becoming a very motivated individual. This basically is something that I can't emphasize enough, is that if you're wanting to continue to climb and escalate in whatever career path that you're already engaged in, the way you lay out everything from your environment to your daily habits to avoiding deterrents that might pull you from continuing to be a motivated individual will definitely play a hand in your longevity in that engagement. So, and this one goes out to all the artists and designers, as well as anyone who has to apply themselves in a creative fashion. We are basically at war against procrastination, mediocrity, and apathy. Procrastination is something like you'll deal with throughout your career. It isn't something that you'll definitely just say, "Oh, I'm done with it. It'll never have a hand in my daily routine." It's going to have a hand. Self management and regulation are always things that we are engaged in. Um, Mediocrity, well, to a creative, that's kryptonite. We try to avoid being mundane and average in a lot of what we do. We don't set ourselves forward to create statements with the intent of it being average. As well as, I can definitely attest that in my community as artists, we try to um, motivate our peers by making statements that inspire our fellow artists. We're always trying to avoid mediocrity. And then, you know, apathy is just the end point of you. If you are in a constant struggle with procrastination and mediocrity, sometimes unfortunately you might find yourself in a state of apathy, and you just you hit a mental wall. Your creative spark begins to become less and less vibrant. So these are the three things that you're basically fighting against, and a motivated person can change the world. History has proven this to be a fact in both good and negative scenarios. So this kind of brings us to inspiration. Inspiration versus motivation. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because while inspiration and motivation do go hand in hand, they function differently in your life, and it's important to know how they come into play and how they are perpetual to each other. I chose this image from an artist by the name of Stuart Lippincott. I came across his work a few weeks ago, and it just really inspired me. I was just taken back, and then his story was really great too. He does images to this visual quality on a daily basis. He tries to do one composition a day, every day, and I believe he's been doing it for a little over a year now. So this is an example of something that will affect me personally. But what do I do afterwards is the question. So inspiration comes once in a while, but can be very powerful. Now that statement might not apply to you. You might be a very impressionable person, and you might get inspired every day. You might simply going into work or going to the park or going to get food or whatever it is. Conversations you might have, visuals you might see, you taking the world in through your five senses is at some point going to affect your thinking, and you might in those scenarios all of a sudden find yourself inspired and ecstatic and uplifted, and but what do? So inspiration can, and I would hope often, lead you to being motivated. It doesn't require effort as it's a natural response. It's a state of being, but it is not always a state of doing. So simply being inspired is no guarantee of you being able to do something with it. It's simply a different change in your perspective. Your thinking is triggered. What you do with it is a choice. And this often leads to the choice or the state of being motivated. You choose to engage in a series of principles or acts or self directed routines that now have put you in a state of being motivated. So, motivation attributes to productivity. We talked about that a little bit. It can define the attributes of something inspiring. So, me, for example, when I look at an image like this, I'm taken back. I'm embracing it for all of its incredible design principles and art principles, but then I do an analysis of it. I break it down as to what it is that is exactly speaking to me. Is it lighting? Is it composition? Is it color? Is it components of the human presence juxtaposed with abstract architecture? And then why is it that these things inspire me? Does it relate to something I've experienced before? Does it create a sense of mood, calm? Does it intrigue me into storytelling? I mean, I break it down for its core principles, because then I'm able to understand what this language does for me and how I can attribute to this language in my own way. So motivation is defined through reason. Choose to engage that inspiration in a series of acts. We're finding reason to carry that inspiration further. It can be cultivated through practice and discipline. So that question that we had, can you teach motivation? I think that you can self-direct your routines and your habits to become a very motivated person. So I think that motivation is a very, as I said, a very personal thing that only you can choose to engage in. So I don't think you can necessarily teach someone to be motivated, but through discussions and through analysis, you yourself can come to a conclusion. Staying motivated. So that's kind of the question at hand. How do you stay motivated? Well, the first thing I would say is identify with your mental space. What kind of thoughts kind of go through your head when you're inspired? And then what do you do after you're inspired? What is it that is pulling you from being motivated? What kind of environments affect you the strongest? What kind of conversations affect you the strongest? What things do you engage that either get you into a positive mindset or a very negative mindset? The thing I would suggest is change your vocabulary. First, identify with your language as you are talking about things you're passionate about. Try to take out words like can't, won't, and maybe. Those are deterrents. Language is very powerful. It tends to dictate our positive approach to whatever it is we're discussing. The words that you choose when you are talking about something you love or are passionate about are pointers to your relationship with that thing. So if you find that most of the words you choose kind of identify you as hesitant in engaging with that topic or subject, you might want to start changing your words. That simple daily habit will kind of help you to become more confident about what it is that you love. This is a big one. Give into positive impulse. So, positive impulse in the form of thinking. What I basically mean is, let's say you've just come home from work. You've worked a long shift, an 8 to maybe 10-hour or 12-hour shift. You get home, you got maybe your coat and your bags, and you kind of place them all down. And then, before you walk uh, into your living room or whatever your space is like, you look at your kitchen. You notice that there are dirty dishes that have been sitting there since maybe this morning. The thought quickly comes to mind, I should clean those dishes. But immediately, a split second later, you maybe create a timestamp. I'll get to it in the morning again, or I'll get to it in an hour, or I need to sit down, rest my feet, collect my thoughts. These are all excuses that we tend to pull into place and bury that positive impulse. That first thought that you had was an important thought, and that is the true character that you are. You should always consider giving into that, or start making it a daily habit to give into that positive impulse. In fact, I would challenge you to give into your positive impulsive thoughts from here on out. Manage your time and keep a daily planner. So I'm sure you've seen these many times. It's probably been mentioned in many articles, and maybe on a couple, maybe in other motivational discussions. You may have heard it mentioned to keep a daily planner. I used to keep lots of daily planners personally. I had physical books or notebooks I would keep, and then I had my digital planners. I would always have reminders through email and through calendars and so forth. And I found that I was getting lost in the task of keeping daily planners. So those became tasks for monitoring tasks. Kind of became a little redundant. And what I found actually worked was simply keeping sticky notes. Sure, it's basic. It's probably not as elaborate as having a digital planner. But me taking a small one-to-one size card and writing down 4 to 6 things that I feel I can achieve in my day actually helps me to stay motivated. You know, Having a list of 30 things that you want to get done in the day is, in my opinion, unrealistic unless you are very much on top of your task achieving skills. And in that case, you probably don't really need to even engage in a discussion about being motivated. You're probably on top of it. But if you struggle to get half of that list of 30 things, well, I would say break that down even further. Do a third of that. In fact, like I say, just 4 to 6 things. Like if you can get those things done in your day, and they should be very important things, not make a sandwich or buy milk. you know Something in the form of go grocery shopping might be a point to put on your sticky note list of 6 important things to get done uh, on that given day, and then do it in the morning. Like as soon as you wake up, write it down while your mind is still fresh. Keep a high protein and vitamin enriched diet. You are what you eat. I'm sure you've heard that many times, but I can attest to the fact that that is true. I often, for my breakfast and lunch scenario when I go to work, I have a smoothie. I'll have my veggies and my fruits all combined into one, and then I'll top that off with a high protein shake. That helps me to keep up my body weight, as well as it's usually loaded with positive fats, omega 6 and my iron and my copper and everything else. Like it's usually loaded with those things, and then I get to combine that with the veggies and the fruit. So going into that diet change, I started to notice that I was feeling a lot more energetic. My thinking was changing. I was feeling more cleared. I just felt more positive about engaging the day. So your chemical makeup is obviously dictated by what you choose to put into your body. So if you're putting, you know, garbage into your body, well, I don't know. How do you think you would feel? So you are what you eat. The positive things you put into yourself resonate outward. So positive thinking versus negative thinking. Well, let's see. So positive thinking cultivates productivity. I hope at this point that's become a little obvious, and it generally makes you feel good. Those two things hand in hand. You'll start to feel immediately with dietary change, and then monitoring your thoughts, and then creating a more engaged and positive mental space. It can be perpetual to inspiring others. So I am a believer in karmic energy. I think that what we do inside resonates outside. So, you know, you can look at it from a practical standpoint. If you feel good inside, you might notice that you engage in conversations more commonly where you are being positive in that conversation. You're talking about motivating things. You might find that you generally carry yourself differently, and you're engaged in the subject matter that you love, and you enjoy talking about it more. People tend to gravitate toward this kind of energy because they would often like to engage in that energy themselves. And there's nothing wrong with keeping a circle of people that all kind of motivate each other and continue to keep each other uplifted on this intent of being in a positive mindset. It can reshape your mental environment. So everything that's been mentioned so far in the form in this the topic of positive thinking will have a hand in your mental environment, and it will dictate your mental environment. So negative thinking. I'm not going to go into detail about the issues of negative thinking, but I will say it can create mental attrition. It can start to pull you down. We talked about the word choices that you engage with when you are talking about things that you are passionate about, or a goal you want to engage. The words that you use are forms of if they're negative words, are forms of mental attrition. They start to pull down your headspace. They start to pull you down from wanting to be engaged in something that you know is important for you. This negative thinking can attribute to stress. Stress isn't just mental, it also affects the body. In the extreme case, lots of stress can cause everything from heart disease to lack of exercise, which can attribute to high blood pressure. It all cycles on itself into things that are just really not good for you. It can weaken your confidence and is a direct deterrent to progress. All right, so here's some things to consider if you're trying to avoid deterrents that might cause mental attrition. Keep a circle of supporting friends. The counsel that you keep, whether it be family or your peers in the workplace, or close friends from your childhood, whoever or whomever, keep these people around you because they are your reflection. They are the people who you can talk to, who don't judge you and understand what it is that you're striving for. And these people can keep you uplifted, and you can do the same thing for them. You listen to them and you can offer positive suggestions, and these are the people that will be there for you through the rough points where you might feel like you're going through some kind of a relapse into that negative mindset. Govern your impulsivity. What I mean is that we talked about giving into positive impulse. I see many great things coming from that, but you need to regulate your thoughts. So you can't act on every single positive impulse that comes into your mind, because quite honestly, you can't split yourself into two or three or however many when those thoughts come to you. What you need to do is, when you have the thoughts, look at the situation and allow yourself to give into what needs your attention immediately, right then and there. We talked about the dishes scenario. You could have had a positive impulsive thought, let me do these dishes right now, but then there could have been others. You could have had a thought of, well, I should probably make lunch for tomorrow, or I should probably clean my carpet, or I'm just I'm talking about the house, just as an example. But I mean, you could have had other thoughts outside of the house and cleaning, and that are important and need your attention. But what right then and there could you commit to? Doing the dishes. It's right in your line of sight. And you know that in that situation, you could have neglected it earlier. So you can't act on every single positive impulse as it happens right then and there, but you can give your attention to what is right within your line of sight, or what at that given point in your day you can achieve. Misery loves company. I'm sure you have come to experience this, and you might potentially be that person who attributes to the misery in the company. And that's why it's important for us to have this conversation now so we can change that. But, I've heard someone say that there are what are called energy vampires that we often run into on a daily or weekly basis. And what they were saying is that you could have your energy levels at 100, right? You could be feeling great, positive, you're engaged in the day, you're ready to tackle everything that, might come to you in the form of an obstacle. And then all of a sudden you come across somebody who wants to have a conversation. That conversation could be about anything, but sometimes that conversation is about a lot of the negative things in that person's life. They might use you as a sounding board to simply complain and complain and complain and complain. And you might have a shield up with the intent of simply being a sounding board, but what happens is those topics start to stick into your mental space. They start to resonate with you. And then you start to think about your own situations that might seem like anchors to you now, that you might feel, oh, I can't get through this, or that's going to really pull me down, or, I have all these issues going on in my life. And then before you know it, you two are on the same pedestal, the same plane, the same headspace. And then when you walk away, you might feel tired. You might want to engage in your excuses again, or you might want to find something that will distract you from having to be productive as you had intended to be that day. Reject your ego and any form of entitlement. Humility goes a long way. Humility can be that one thing that allows you to continue to grow in your career. I can't stress how incredible it's been for me personally when I've come across artists who have inspired me over the years, and then we have a conversation, and I find that they are very humble. And what I mean is, for example, I've talked to artists who for years have been the motivation or the inspiration for me to become motivated, in my own personal works and practices. And then when I talk with them, I find out that they have followed my work, and then they even ask me for critiques or tell me about some of their personal goals and how they feel as if they haven't quite made it just yet, but they're, you know, excited to be on the path of growth. Those things really floor me because these are people who are considered celebrities in my community. And it's just a statement that resonates with humility. Stop putting processed waste into your body and calling it food. We kind of talked about that a little bit. I'm not going to go into detail about it any further, but just understand that if you put garbage into yourself, your attitude will definitely evolve around it and your thinking will evolve around it. Save the drama for your artwork. If you're the type of person that, when faced with a task, erupts into attitude or a mindset where you have to boast about why you can't do something, or even attack others who are putting a lot of effort into wanting to do the opposite, I say take that drama, put it into your artwork. You know, quiet the negative thinking, quiet the excuses, and the outburst and that energy that you're putting into these potentially dramatic scenarios that don't really require that you act in such a way. Channel that energy into your work. If anything, you're going to find that you start to become more meditative as you are engaged in your work, and then people can look at the work and see it in all of its dramatic beauty. I think that's the best place for it anyway. Cultivate creative space. So this one you may have heard before. If you have an office or a workspace or a loft or wherever it is where you go to be creative, start to put up inspirational works that keep you engaged in your aesthetic choices or keep you engaged in that mood and that headspace that helps with world building. Designate a workstation for production and no internet. I usually always have a high-end desktop machine that I use for a lot of my contract and freelance and personal developments. But there are times when I'll use it to check social media. There should be a balance to this. You should not spend the majority of your time on social media with an expensive machine versus being productive. So I would challenge you to even pull internet from that machine and simply use your phone for surfing social media. You'll find that you start to sit down and use your time more effectively when you are using that tool for creativity. Collect music and soundtracks that trigger your imagination. So music is such a powerful form of abstract inspiration. I have seen many statements from some of my favorite artists like Beksinski. When he was alive, he made the statement that the majority of his work was inspired by music alone. So simply listening to the sounds um, triggered his imagination and gave him an infinite amount of creativity, which I find in and of itself inspiring. So I always try to keep certain soundtracks. For me, like, the Blade Runner, the classic Blade Runner soundtrack gets me right into a headspace where I want to create things. I mean, I can turn it on at any given time and find that I'm able to become engaged in my work. And then, place, lighting in this workspace, set up lighting in this workspace that helps to attribute to the kind of mood that you like to be engaged in. And then, you can even put a couple motivational quotes within this space as well. One thing I used to do is I had a caption that I used to always put into my office that said 1 hour a day, and I put that in there because my schedule is very, very full. Like, it's always full. I'm usually working on more than one client contract, managing a team. I teach, and I manage over different staff, and so this combined with trying to manage personal work can become very very saturated priority and commitment wise. Keeping at least a slot, a window in my day where I can commit 1 hour to my own personal development is enough for me to acknowledge that I am continuing to push myself personally and I am making progress in that way. That concludes the discussion that I wanted to have with you. And, I hope that this is going, better yet, I know that this is going to be a starting point, if not a continued push in your life in the form of productivity and you continuing to engage challenges in your life as a motivated person. Thank you.